Thank you for joining. Thank you for starting the day so early. It's almost the weekend, so I appreciate it. I had the honor of speaking to some of you in person last week, but now really happy to be here. Now, a quick introduction of myself. I'm Vincent from YouTube. So my day-to-day job, I work as a partner manager across Singapore and Malaysia, and primary role really is to help media corporation, large organizations succeed on the platform. Now, when you think about success on YouTube, I think about two main things really, and also for yourself, for representing your news org and your corporation, success really come in two ways, right? Number one, it's I want to be able to get my news out there to as many people as possible. So reach becomes an important success factor. So how do I gain reach? There are content based, there are optimization based, there are different things that you can do to sort of win reach, right? Or extend your reach to as many people as possible. And all this includes like growing a subscriber base and all these different kind of things. Number two, it's if I can make some money out of this, then that would be great too, right? So there's the second part of it, which is revenue. Now, in order for you to be qualified for revenue, of course, you have to first be a YPP. You need to be revenue enabled, and in order for you to be revenue enabled, you need to hit certain metrics on the YouTube platform. Now, today we're not getting into that, but what I'm looking at really is how do I help you and your org sort of achieve these two things, and then now let's add another layer into the layer of elections, as is what we're going to talk about today, right? So the format that I'm going to do today is I will share I will go on with the slides and everything, but I want, let me see how to present. Just bear with me. Cool. Yeah, so at any point of time, if you have any question at all, obviously we'll keep some time at the end for Q&A, but I also want you to just input because I want this to be as interactive as possible. So just input your questions in the chat at any point of time. Don't worry about distracting me at all. That's perfectly fine. And as I go on, I'll find time to address some of these questions that you have. But the main objective today is really finding out how can we help you and your organization succeed in this time of election. And I'll bring you through a couple of things. I'll bring you through what YouTube's take is on news in general, what YouTube's take is on content creation on a very broad stroke level, and then we'll go into actual practical videos and content strategy and publishing strategy for election, which is coming who knows when, right? In the next couple of months, next year, but it will come. And how do I prepare all of you into a future where we are equipped for a digital election? We are equipped for a video first election as well, right? So just want to start by saying really what YouTube and how YouTube look at news is we want to be able to surface authoritative news cohort like yourself who create content on the platform. And how do we surface you and ensure that Malaysians in general is able to view and to consume authoritative news sources, right? And also not just surface, we are also trying to weed out those sources which are not authoritative, sources which are, we're combating fake news as we go along. And how do we really move towards that? YouTube has its way of doing it. And then also very importantly is delivering the news with context and leaving that information as is truthfully to the audience, and the audience can decide for themselves what they feel about a particular content or a particular news. And third piece is basically how do we use some of this technology that we have within YouTube to surface some of this news and support journalism as a whole. If we look at YouTube news product, I think we've evolved a long way. But today, if you go onto the platform, you'll see things like top news, breaking news, and all the different news that's in there. If we look at the recent, say for example, the conviction in the jail of our ex-premier, for example, like those news are then trending, and those news will then appear on this shelf that YouTube has created for the Malaysian audience specifically, Now, we also have this very similar shelf during the time of COVID, for example. An election, you'll see a lot of this shelf being taken over by election news. And these are just some of the things that we do on YouTube to surface the news that your corporation create. Now, today I want to get into an election broad strategy and how should you think about an election per se. So when you think about just running a YouTube channel, I'm not sure how many of you today run the channel end to end, or some of you are just broadcast journalists that writes article, that creates video news. But when you think about a holistic plan, I want you and your content team or your editorial team to think about the plan as in three different types of format. Now, when I talk about three different types of format, what are they? Now, number one, it's the hub format. Now, the hub format for news are basically your day-to-day news, right? Your think about your current news affair, think about your in-depth interview, think about your analysis. All of those are basically your hub. Meaning to say, these are basically news that you put on a day-to-day basis, right? When you think about help and hub, what's the difference then? When you think about the help content basically in red over here is what people are going to search for. For example, who is this candidate? If someone wants to know more about, say, Syed Sadeh, for example, then they want to know who is Syed Sadeh, and you have an interview that basically answers that query. So help basically is you understanding what the query of the people are and you providing that information proactively, right? So that's basically a help content. And the hero content basically is leading up to that hero moment. Now, in a time of election, obviously this hero moment will be, say, you have multiple moments such as your polling day, such as your main presidential debate, or such as your announcement by EC. Those are some of the moments which is hero. So your hub and help really is building towards that hero moment that's going to happen. So if you look at the sort of like the wave over here, you have like your in help, which is a constant, and then your hub will come up and down because depending on the period and news that's there, and then you have a peak, which is what we call the hero moment. Now I'll walk through in more detail what exactly some of this content could be so that you can actually take some notes and worry not because this will be sent across to you as well so you can actually refer to them later. So when you think about a election strategy, what's important is really how do you convert at a point of time when it comes to election, everything will be high gear in election. Now you want to be able to give your audience a destination when they come to your channel and they're able to get everything with regards to the election. So which means it's not just putting out the content, it's about organizing this information in a way that people can understand. And you have the entire spectrum of it, not just a press conference recording. It is a press conference recording plus a deduction of, say, analysis, plus a people's sentiment on what election is all about. So it's about giving a whole breadth and depth when it comes to an election-driven news. And one of the things that I used to talk about a lot is, I think maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, we think about election or we think about any news in general, speed becomes like the most important thing. And you think about speed in a sense of like, let's talk about the our ex-premier Najib and his sentencing in say for example and sending to prison, for example. A bunch of journalists waiting in Sungai Buloh and a bunch of journalists were waiting in Kajang, for example. And then, yes, you're right, whoever that's at Kajang first will then be the most advantageous into giving that footage of what's happening. Very rarely today that's happening, and even in Kajang then, multiple news desks are already waiting there. So now speed becomes less of concern, but is speed important? Yes, right? So speed is still important, but now everyone has access and everyone has speed. So what becomes more important right now is if everyone is at the PC or everyone is at the venue, how do you differentiate your content offering versus another news desk? Is it the BJ? Is it the broadcast journalist who is going to make the difference? Is it your question asked that will make the difference? Is it how you present the entire package of that news coverage that's going to make a difference? So speed is going to be important, frequency is going to be important, but the way that you deliver the content, it's going to be ever more so important now than ever, right? Because this is how you would start differentiating. This is how you will start building a following to your channel on YouTube. Oh, I apologize. I don't know what happened. I must have skipped. Cool. So next is, as you know, 4 years ago, and I was jokingly telling the group that I met last week as well, which Malaysians suddenly everyone is whipping out their mobile phone, using that as our mic for recording. Journalists are setting up tripods and just recording the entire PC. And I think today it's just becoming a norm. No longer are we going with our broadcast camera, maybe for interviews, yeah. But most of the time for PC, everyone is just going there with the phone and immediately just recording that. Now, recording that and broadcasting that live is one thing, but very, very increasingly, we're seeing also active engagement because news today is no longer delivered by a newscaster abroad or a journalist to an audience. Today, news really has become a two-way engagement. We are seeing journalists really now engaging with the audience and getting questions, getting comments from the audience on what they want to know, the questions they want to ask, and then using that and engaging and creating a two-way communication. Now, this has also transcended and moved outside of, say, a press conference setting. We've seen news desks, we've seen analysis segment that is actually now using some of this a lot more actively. So there are ways that you can actually use this, and I can walk through more, but today, because we're going more broad stroke, there are ways to use this in a way that, for example, we've seen in this video mark here out of Korea, then they actually use this to, hey, ask questions, and I can pin those questions, and then I can answer them as I go along. But this could also be a revenue generating format for you. For example, you can also turn this into, hey, if you want to ask a question and you want your question to be apparent, you can actually pay for what we call fan funding, which is now available in Malaysia, which is you pay $5 and then your chat or your comment will be highlighted in a color and it will go on the very top. And then from there on, the anchor or the journalist, whoever it is, can then pick those questions and then answer those questions in priority, for example, right? Those are also ways that you can actually do it. Now, when it comes to live, there are also risks, right? So there are risks that people will sabotage your life. They will come in and say a distasteful thing, say offensive thing within the live itself. But YouTube understands this, and then we have multiple ways for you to then moderate some of these chats. Now, obviously, you can set up chat moderators, and these are the people that think of this as like channel managers who can come in and then decide what to approve, what not to approve, right? There could be keyword blocking, right? So there are certain keywords like profanity, there are keywords like competitive keywords that you prefer not to have within your chat itself, and you can actually do that. There are also different chat moderation tools, like for example, slow chat, which prevents spamming, which someone can only post every 5 minutes, 1 minute. There are invite-only chat, which can invite certain amount of people. There are subscriber-only chat, which is useful when you want to increase the number of subscribers to your channel, and you only want to determine whoever is subscribed to my channel can only chat. So different ways to play with chat so that you can make it a more safer experience, a more cleaner experience as you engage digitally and online. Yeah, this is an invite-only chat, which will be useful when you have like certain panels probably on the platform and you want to use that as an avenue to chat further. Now, mobile life, as I was saying, it's of no surprise. Today, as you go towards a election, and you have like multiple location, as you go towards, say, debate, for example, you have multiple locations, multiple debates, multiple candidates happening, everything at the same time at different places. Mobile life really helps you to then bring life experience to your audience. And now over here, really what you can do is, if you do not know how to go live concurrently, definitely do reach out to the team, understand, and we can send you resources on how to achieve this. But this is where I talk about speed, right? So going live on a mobile platform really help you to reach and help consumers to reach the candidate that moment at that very moment itself. So then this is becoming more and more important. And now I feel like today this is already becoming a staple when it comes to Malaysian news and when it comes to delivering those particular news. Now, next I'm going to talk about a bit more broad about optimizing the channel, and how can you now, as I spoke about reach, how can you then now reach a lot more people? One thing first, when I think about news, right, I feel like there's two buckets of news. The first bucket is current news. And this is news that you deliver today, and a lot of journalists in this room today will put up, write the news, but this is news with very quick expiry date, very quick best buy date, right? This is news that when you put up, people will read today or tomorrow maybe, but 3 days, 5 days down the road, the news is stale, it is irrelevant, right? A lot of us know about this. When you think about news organization that is very successful today, they are doing two things in general. They are doing what we call the first bucket, which is the current news, but they're also doing the second bucket, which is called the evergreen news. Now, when you think about a format like an evergreen news basically has a long expiry date. Now, that news can expire 5 years down the road, and it will still be semi-relevant. Now, think about, say, a profiling of Najib and his years of politics. And I have his years from his starting politics until the very now, today's, whatever that's happening today. Now, that piece of news may take you more time to create, maybe a multiple series of documentary that you create, maybe a deep dive that you do or analysis that you do, but that news will be relevant today, tomorrow, the year after, the 2 years after, right? So that's when I talk about evergreen. So a successful news organization today on a video format, right, will have really two grounds to pay. So you have like the current news affair and the evergreen. Now, I'll give you some examples of some organizations that have done this well. You think about CNN, you think about BBC, obviously all those have done well. I'll give you something closer to home. Al Jazeera has been a good org that has really found some success on this. SCMP, for example, has been really successful on delivering news which is current and also regional news as well. Another example would be, say, across the Causeway, CNA has done that very successfully, and seen them pivoting into now a separate brand altogether, CNA and CNA Insider. Now, those are just some examples of news platform which has gone into it. Now, explainers today over here in this slide is just one of the iteration of an evergreen news, right? So the evergreen news basically will have some of this, if not all of this features, which includes they are evergreen, which is the topics are more broad stroke and it cuts across a longer period of time. It's not a current news that's happening now. It is educational. So this also builds into what people will be searching for, what people are interested in. It is topical, searchable, obviously. It is intriguing. It's something that people want to know, right? And it can be longer in format. This doesn't have to be a typical, say, a 2-minute video coverage that you do or 2-minute news coverage that you do. This can be a 20-minute long video. This can be a 15-minute long video, and you have 3 parts for it. Any of this would work. And an example I will give you is, I don't know how many of you have watched of late and recently, say the Changi prison example and living in Changi prison. I think CNA has done, and that has actually trended really, really well across the region, and also in the US as well. That people want to know some things like that. Hey, like right now, since there's this big hoo-ha about our ex-premier going to prison, does people understand the prison condition in Malaysia? And is that a topic that I can then maybe peel a little bit deeper? Those are some of the things that it's worth thinking about when it comes to uncovering news. So news today is not just, hey, in the most concise manner, give you what is happening in Malaysia today. For current news, that makes sense. But as I was saying about in-depth storytelling, a lot of news today are actually moving into, they're thinking of, they're producing this like how they will produce a TV show already. And you see a lot of now, even on Netflix as a platform, news has converted into those kind of storytelling. Serial killer news, for example, being told in a multi-parter. The news of Anna Sorokin and a scam news now being told in a multi-parter as well. I have different angles. I talk to different people. And that's really what I feel news have today. And a video platform like YouTube today has enabled news platform to really now flex a different side of muscle when it comes to reporting, and allowing you that space to now tell a fully in-depth and investigative story. And when one of the platform that's done well, I think a lot of news, like I remember the days of like sand mining. Was it HM that I think put up a very in-depth news, and that started an entire ball rolling. The Star Rage have actually done really well with, like, child labor, child prostitution, and sexual assault, and really moving into that. So thinking about all of those topics, how can you then create, using just some of those, create a more long form investigative news on the YouTube platform? And one of the biggest misconception is, as we sit down for interviews, and interviews are bread and butter of what journalists do and what news corporation do. We sit down for interview. We sit down. The entire interview could be 1.5 hours long. We cut that down to maybe a very, very generous 6 minutes long, and we put that up on TV. And today, obviously, debate format has come on, and people are watching, like, say, an hour and a half debate. But besides that, a lot of interviews that we do are usually very, very concise, and we usually cut that out. Now, as you look at this Al Jazeera example over here, like what they have done really is, if it's an hour and a half, they will upload the hour and a half. And you'll be surprised that there are audiences who are interested in long form, in unedited, raw interview with key personality that they care about, that they are interested in, they are intrigued by, right? And some of the corporation in, say, for example, in Thailand, what they have done is, I put up a 3 minutes interview, which is a concise one, and I have behind a paywall my 1.5 hours. And they know I ask good questions. So if you want to know what the 1 hour interview looks like, hey, pay, and you're able to then watch all of these interviews that we do on a long form basis. Now, that's also one way that you can actually do that. Now, from the long form, do not waste it, right? The whole idea here is like, if I give you a coconut tree, you want to be able to use every part of the coconut tree to your advantage. The fruit, the leaf, the stem, whatever it is, the bark. So the same thing with interviews. How do you then now use that long form interview and cut them into ways that you can use it? Now, an example that I can give you is this. One, I have 1.5 hours long. I cut them into 8 different 3 minutes with nuggets and pieces of information that people can relate to. Now, instead of 1, I have 8, 9 now, right? And from there, I cut them to short form video format that people can then now put on different platforms. So obviously on YouTube, you're using YouTube Shorts, but there are other competitive short form video format I will not mention today, but you can also use it as such, right? Third, you can also use them as stories within your YouTube platform, or you can actually use a still image as community posts, asking people on poll what they think about certain things, certain issues, certain people, certain questions, certain answers. And now you see, from this one video that I have, I've now created 30 assets that I can use across all these different platforms. That's just one example, right? But for every video that you create, there is the opportunity to now scale. There's the opportunity to now then figure out what are the sub interests of your readers and your audience, and how do you appeal to those interests, right? Very, very powerful, and requires a bit of thinking on how you want to do it. And one more thing, it's because we've done so many good work. And as I said, sometimes we do out really extensive interviews and really extensive reporting, but the news is only valid for 2 days, today and tomorrow, and nobody reads it after. But because there's so many footage and archival content that you have from before, is there ways for you to repackage some of this archive content and reuse them in a way that makes sense for your audience? We have seen this in many different iterations. We've seen this in like even print iteration, and just using some of this visual, some of this footage, and then telling it from a broadcast journalist perspective and how that has changed today. But there definitely is perspective to this, using historical context into building your narrative and the story, right? So you can see some of this. I will send this across. You can actually view them and how they can actually be useful to your organization as well. Now, one which is not extremely popular in Malaysia, but I've seen increasingly popular in many different countries, China, Taiwan, Thailand, Indonesia as well, is the rise of the voice of journalists, right? So I think journalists have increasingly becoming more and more vocal. I think everyone have their own POV, their own take, their own slice into news reporting. And today, corporation has even allowed them to have that particular voice, allow them to have that particular space to then voice out what they think. So they actually now have segments within the main show. They are their own IP on its own. We even seen independent journalists a lot within the region as well, as they come out to create their own content, not bogged down by editorial or anything. They are their own managing editor. So, but really using that personal voice in giving very professional input, intake onto a particular issue that's very subjective, right? Without being condescending, without being very divisive in nature, but really just a different voice and a different take when it comes to reporting. Definitely this may not fly with every organization, but if it does, like I feel like this has been extremely useful. Now, it doesn't have to be on a topic such as politics per se. You can start thinking about this on, say, for example, business news. You can start by looking at tech news. You can start looking at the different desk and different news segment, and then slowly easing into politics and slowly easing into a topic like election, for example. And how can you give journalists a more forefront voice in producing the content? And this is something that we know for sure, which is getting expert commentary. You can have like political experts from universities, but it's important to get a third-party view onto the things that you do. It serves multiple purposes as a check and balance, for example, but also as an alternative view from what you may have can sometimes be off balance, and you can have someone who come in and balance views. Sometimes it's because of the personality itself. It's very centric, it's funny, or it's very extremely professional, but you can actually think about cross using different experts from different field to deliver a news which is a lot more comprehensive in nature. And yes, thank you, Adit, for reminding them. And for those who have not registered, please register your attendance. That helps us better understand and also helps us send you those materials post the call as well. Thank you. And now you've seen all of this sort of like optimization strategy that we present. Last is then, yeah, I've produced a good content, good job. How do I now put the content forward onto YouTube so people can view this content? And believe it or not, all humans are judgmental to a certain aspect. And when you think about content, how do you judge a content? Imagine you yourself as an audience going onto youtube.com. You're watching content on your phone, you're watching content on your desktop. You're now haven't started watching, you're going onto the platform. You now see boxes of videos and contents available for you. What made you click onto those particular content, right? So you will probably decide based on a couple of things. Now, the two most important thing is title and thumbnail. Because why? That's the first thing that I see as an audience. I will look at the title, say now this is Segundo Debate Presidential and Mexico. I know this is about Mexico presidential debate. Cool, I understand the title. I look at the visual, the thumbnail. I know who are the people that's moderating. I know who are the people that's speaking. Those are the two things that any audience will get today. And that is my number one determination whether I should watch or shouldn't watch. So all of the content when you put out there, that is the first thing that people look at. Is your title clear? Can someone understand your title from just reading them? That's the first thing that you need to think about, right? Because if people can't understand what you're trying to show on the video, why would they click on the video? Number two, then comes a bit more visual, which is whatever that I cannot tell on the title, can I show them on the thumbnail, right? That's very, very important. And today we have seen now a hybrid between those two. We've seen people even using the thumbnail to highlight across like, hey, different, for example, if I give you the example of this Mexico presidential debate, I will put names of these people over here. I will put debate with A, B, C, D, E, right? I can use the thumbnail as my secondary or my primary title, and I supplement them using here. Now, why is this title important? Because YouTube understands the title by scanning the title. And if someone is searching for that title, can YouTube surface this content or not? So when I think about title, my number one criteria is my title searchable? Will be my number one criteria. Is my title searchable and is my title descriptive and interesting that I want to click in? Now, there's a difference between descriptive and clickbait, right? I am delivering real value, real news, but my title should be able to reflect so. My thumbnail should be interesting, and my description is basically this only happens when you go inside the video. When I go into a particular YouTube video, at the bottom of the video, there's like, hey, description of the particular, what the video is all about. Now that's the description. Now you want to be as descriptive as possible. You want to write a short summary of what the video is about. Now, why is description important? Now, description is important not because someone go in there. Of course, that's important. But description helps YouTube understand what we call a metadata. Now, metadata are things combined, like title, thumbnail, description is what metadata. But YouTube collects this as a information so that they can surface this to content. So sometimes, for example, your title does not say details of like certain things, but your description is very detailed. It tells people like, hey, what they should expect. Now, YouTube also scans the description, and if someone is searching for things within the description, YouTube will also surface videos. And you'll notice this in your own search behavior. And sometimes when you're searching for certain things, the title does not have, but actually this video is relevant because YouTube understands that from, say, description, tags, and all the different things that makes up your video metadata. Okay? So my number one thing as I finish my content is start thinking about what the title is going to be. Start thinking about what the thumbnail is going to be and the description that goes into it. Now, this will then come down to one thing, and your metric to then look at success is two things, which is impression. How many times is that video being served to someone? Whether they click it or not, that's secondary. Now, how many times is being served? Now, it's being served because it's relevant, right? And it's relevant because your metadata say so. Okay, number one. Number two, how many people actually click on it? Now, relevant is one thing. Click on it can be, hey, maybe my title is not clear enough. Maybe my thumbnail is not great enough. So look at all your historical data, understand what is working for you. And what is working for you, meaning to say, what is high in click-through rate? What is high in impression? Are there commonalities and themes that you can learn from that? And then use that as a tool to guide you in order for you to create better and more content. And obviously, visual today plays a huge difference, but I feel like today, most of the news org are already doing it. They by outright call out CNN or Times or whichever organization, outright. People look at their branding, they know it's a news corporation. They do not have to second guess, and that gives you a very clear branding and advantage at the forefront and forward. Now, community, as I talk about news now being a two-way communication, community being one of the tools that they can actually use. The community is basically what you can actually post. So you can post multiple different things. It can be a short video clip. It can be visual. It can be a poll to get people to vote. Now, what you can do, for example, I'll give you an example of a good community post. I'm going to do a investigative story or in-depth story about 3 topics, but I'm not sure which one. And you'll be surprised how responsive your community is. Ask them what you should do, A, B, or C, and you'll be surprised by the comments that will come in. They are very vocal. Once you build a community that is loyal to you, they are willing to tell you exactly what they want to watch. And that helps guide your content making decisions as well. Right? And there are different tools, obviously, and I won't go into too much detail over here, but they're like end cards, they're like subscription tool which you can use. And I'll probably send you some materials after this and link you to the YouTube help page so you can actually use this. But this is important. I want to spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes talking about this, which is trends. Understanding trends and understanding what is trending in the country, in the region, on YouTube, on Google, all of this you can actually find out. Now, during the time of, say, Brexit and EU, one of the examples over here is, I want to understand which is being discussed more. Is Brexit as a topic more important, or is EU as a topic more important? I want to see how I can actually maybe leverage, you can use that and guide my content making decision. And what you realize is there are a couple of things you can do. You can first now search by worldwide. If I'm targeting my news towards a global audience, what is the topic and how is it trending worldwide? I can look at the period of days when they search for it. So if this is a relatively new topic and I just want to see past 7 days what people are thinking about, you can actually use this. And I can go into category as a broad stroke, and I can look at YouTube search and Google search. Now, I'll give you one very interesting fact. Is today, YouTube search is the second largest search engine on the internet. If you have a question today, where do you go? You go to Google, right? That's common. But you realize, I don't know how many of you realize, your behavior will then, I want to see a video content out of this. Did someone create a video? Say, I want to buy a computer. I want to look at reviews. I'll go to Google and then I'll go to YouTube. It's very common, and YouTube today is the second largest search engine. So you can actually toggle this to between Google and YouTube. And for those who are not aware, this is actually trends.google.com. Okay, and this is where you can actually get all of this. And from there, you can actually look at, hey, by region where the search are coming from. You can also look at like comparative keywords, what people are searching for on with regards to the topic. So this helps guide your decision. Now, I'll give you an example now in the context of election. For example, I have an exclusive between 2 different politicians. I'm not talking about like the largest politician. I'm not talking about the president of the UMNO or PAS or whatever. I'm just talking about, hey, new candidate between, say, a new young candidate in this town versus that town. How do I know which one should I take? one thing you can do is basically search for interest. Look at what people are searching for, look at interest within the country, and look at how they're trending across time. And this is one way you can actually very quickly decide. Now, this, if I think about this general topic, I can look at, say, coffee and tea. I could look at cats and dogs. I can compare not only two, I can compare 4 or 5 topics and decide which one should I prioritize as a journalist and what topic should I cover today, right? So extremely important. And if you have any questions at all, please input them. I just want to quickly remind you so that you can actually do that if you have any questions at all. Cool. So these are the different things that I was talking about. Producing content, putting up a news, writing an article, all of that is important. But I would implore all of you to go back, look at your historical data. Look at how that article or that video has trended by impressions. How many people actually saw that article, read that article, view that video, and how long they spend on that, right? Do they go in and skip? Do they go in and continue watching it until the very end? So understanding some of these metrics, right, help you make better content in the sense that if people are not seeing it enough, maybe my thumbnail is not interesting, maybe my title is not working, maybe my format is not working. If someone is watching it very short, out of the 100% of the video, they only watch 5%. Maybe my storytelling is not interesting. Maybe I should change that. Maybe I should show them the best part in the beginning and then slowly get into storytelling. I can play with different formats and different ways of doing this, right? But really, the fundamental of all content creation is I need to continuously test, right? It's always a series of testing. I don't think we ever finish testing as at YouTube. And as I work with my partners and my clients, what we do is always set a time limit for tests. Do something new. Don't be afraid to try, but do them for a particular time. Say do them for 3 months. Do 10 videos, 12 videos. And if it doesn't work, okay, it doesn't work. Why didn't it work? And start changing and moving and continuously transforming from there on. Now, next is basically what's new. Shorts is new. I think today audiences are really consuming content in a very, very different format. Maybe most of us here are boomer, millennials, but today Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're really moving towards a very short attention span. So as I told you, like while there is interest for 1.5 hours interview, today there's also a very increased interest in the 30 seconds, 60 seconds vertical format video. Now, this may be a separate content, a separate audience altogether. This may be audience today who are not consuming your news content. But how do you reach out to them? Now, shorts is one way to do that. Short form video is one way to do that. Really just getting straight to the point, giving them that information, and then wrap it up, right? They want to know, and shorts is going to be the forefront of the new generation, right? While long form is important, short form is also becoming increasingly important. And the vertical format per se, because consumption happens on a mobile device. So start thinking about how you can actually use this, as YouTube is also moving towards a short form monetization model in the future. Cool. So I've spoken a lot about like the strategy. I think I spent a bit more time today talking about optimization and strategy. Now, the election journey today, it's of no surprise to you, right? Which is why I won't go into too much details. There's a lot of examples on the things that you can do. And we'll send you some examples. We'll send you all of this so you can actually view some of these videos. But I want to give you prescriptively what looks like a good election plan. As you know, we go through this entire cycle, right? There is getting ready for election. You see a bit of that happening today, saying that, hey, maybe this is a good time for election. Maybe election is coming, yada, yada. Then there's the actual announcement of the election, the parliament being dissolved, and the actual election date and all this kind of stuff. And then there's a campaigning period where people will go on streets, candidates will campaign. There is the actual day, D-Day itself, polling, counting. There's a new government swearing in. There's 100 days, 200 days, manifesto, and all this different kind of stuff, right? But with every election, it's always the same. The same in a sense that there is a throng of new voters. And as you know, EC, as you know, the government, as you know, different parties, we want to encourage young people to go out and vote, right? It's also becoming a problem in many different parts of the world, not unique to Malaysia. But how do you then really get people to go out there? You need to educate them because they are first time, they are entirely new to the selection process. So there is actually merit in doing this entire education basis. We've seen some examples across the years. I'll send some of this across. But awareness doesn't only come from the voting. Some of them doesn't even know what election is all about. What are some of the processes? What are some of the parties? What are some of the candidates? All this kind of stuff can be on a very light-hearted manner, or it can be very serious in nature, but really just educating them on what election is all about. So there are voice from the streets, vox pops, interviews, and whatnot. But there's also an inspiring journey, right? There's also like how you can build human story. For example, I was showing this example by Google in India about this guy who has probably voted like 20 times in his life, right? Probably 100 odd years old and like probably vote so many times. Now, that story is not about just voting, it's about the resilience, about the persistence of a particular individual going out continuously because he believes in democracy, right? You see how that has changed, how your brand today as a news organization now is being positioned. Yes, I'm still talking about election, but now I'm peeling it in a very different manner. And you can also like look at SAYS and peeling this on a very sort of comedic and a light-hearted angle. That's also one way to do it. You can get audience to be part of this entire practice. They can come in and ask questions. You can do live debate, live segment. But really, when you think about it in the awareness phase, how we're thinking about it is splitting into different things that you can do. Maybe you do some, maybe you do all. But having it informative, managing some sort of audience expectation, have storytelling built into it, and a personality led. Meaning this personality could be a broadcast journalist led, could be an invited guest led, but really having all this gives you a better structure onto what sort of videos can you create. And this is just like a guidance. Don't take this by the book or written in a stone, but this is a guidance that you can actually refer to when you're creating content for elections per se. Then come the announcement. When an announcement is being made, a lot of people will ask then, what next? But for a news organization, here is where you start to kick off what you need to do, right? So you need to start building that trust. You need to start building an expectation so that audience know what to expect. Some of you may have your own hashtag. Say, I think in the previous year, like I've seen Malaysia Memilih. We've seen it's Malaysian choice. We've seen very straightforward GE14, GE15. So you have your own brand when it comes to election, and that helps people follow you a lot closer because it helps people understand what you're trying to do as a news org. But you have different stories which falls within those different announcements, before, after, and you also have the call for elections. You have all of this happening as well, and then obviously analysis become very important because I feel this is where you start to stand out from different people, right? Because these are formats, right? Remember I talked about evergreen. Now evergreen content really is all about formats. Now formats are basically just what the show is about and how can you repeat them. So you have a particular podcast, talk show, reaction, interview, a format that is uniquely yours that could be repeated time and time again. So then this is basically what you have. These are some of the formats that can be repeated for the next 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 1 week, 2 weeks, however long that is. Then comes the campaigning, and campaigning then comes manifesto. That is deep diving into topics, interests. This could be labor, this could be foreign worker, this could be issues which are non-stranger to Malaysia, toll, fuel. These are also different topics and manifesto, which I think a lot of political parties, the manifesto can be 50 pages long, and sometimes we like to pick out one page and really go deep into it. This is the moment to do it right? Really going down campaigning and understanding what are the different promises from the different party and what they actually mean to laymen, to rakyat out there. Now, this is the part where you can actually start differentiating yourself, right? This is where parties will also announce candidates and you can go down. Remember, I talked about archive. This is where archive can come in. This is where investigative journalists can come in and talking about this different things that you can do. So there are different things that you can do over here. Manifesto candidates, run up rally issues, and understanding and tweaking and diving into this, right? This is more campaigning. Then come polling. This is D-Day. Everything is on the high at this day, right? You want to have a full channel 24-hour stream. You want to be able to deliver news to people at any time of the day, setting up for that and like getting people. Imagine everything that you do over here now is now moving into like a high gear over here, right? Because this is D-Day. People are reporting, people are reacting, people are going down to vote. Then comes, a lot of I think in the previous years we have like election booth drama and like they're blocking the roads and all this kind of stuff. You want to be able to be the forefront and reporting some of these things happening, right? You want to set all of this in advance, but you also want to be on ground as it happens as well. So over here, live is going to be extremely huge, right? As compared to the previous where you have pocket of live, but D-Day and D-Day reporting, this is just some examples on how you can actually start planning for them. And then last but not least, you then have like the announcements and you have the summary and you have then look at like who are the winners, losers, and what they mean. And very quickly after that, swearing in will happen. You have all the different mandates and then you follow the journey throughout. So this entire journey from non-election into election D-Day itself can happen anything from say 4 weeks, 8 weeks. But I think the planning really starts today. The planning doesn't happen when an announcement is being made. I think all news desks, all editors and broadcast journalists need to have an idea of how the bandwidth is going to happen, how you're going to structure your newsroom into doing this, and really what that means for you. And once election plan kicks off, you're going on a high gear. That's basically what it is, right? And yeah, I am conscious of time. I want to spend some time maybe answering some questions from the group over here. But thank you very much. I hope all of you are able to get something out of this, broad strokely from YouTube and also from the election, a more practical approach on what you can do. So yeah, anybody, if you have any question at all, please unmute yourself, ask a question. You can use the raise hand function. You can type your questions in the chat if you have any, and I'm happy to answer them. Anything on YouTube at all is also okay. It doesn't have to be elections if you have any. We have a very shy group today. Really? It can be unique to your news org as well if you have any. Cool. I'll give one more minute. If there's nothing from the group, I just want to say thank you very much. Thank you everyone for spending the day. And I just want to say that I'm extremely thankful for all of you who use YouTube on a daily basis personally and using it as a platform to deliver news not only to Malaysians but to audiences across the region and then globally. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for doing it in an authoritative manner so that people can get the fastest news, the most factual news, and news that matters to all Malaysians. Anchi, your question is, do you find adding chapter markers help for long form videos? Absolutely, especially for long form videos which has no definite structure, like a 2 hours interview, for example. You don't have breakers or like breaks and whatnot. So sometimes you uncover different topics, right? You talk about, say, foreign policy over here, and you talk about, say, fuel over here. So that that becomes a useful point for you to like, hey, if you want to listen to this particular topic, do this. Come here, come here, come here, come. So it helps YouTube understand, it helps audience understand, and that's also where it helps you understand. So you can actually cut this out to be separate clips and separate highlights for your short form videos. So yeah, extremely useful, and we've seen success by News.org using that. Thank you for the question. It's a good one. Any more questions? Cool. If not, I'll pass it back to Sabaria and like Dr. Sab, thank you for inviting me. And I'm super happy. If there's anything, yeah, you please reach out to Dr. Sab and she can reach out to our team.